And I'd like to thank all of you for being here today. I mean, this is really great, and I really met some great people. So as Eric said, I'll tell you a little bit about the things that we do in my lab, and in particular on infectious diseases. So tuberculosis is a deadly killer. 1.5 million people die from TB every year. There was actually a recent documentary on PBS that some of you might have watched called TB, Silent Killer, that takes you through the TB epidemic in South Africa. It was really eye-opening to see how much of a burden the disease can be on someone and someone's family. Nokubeka, the 12-year-old girl who was featured in that documentary, could just be the girl who lives next door to you. She loves to play, she loves to sing, she loves to dance. Sadly, she lost her mom to tuberculosis, and she's not facing the same disease. Not any kind of TB, multiple drug-resistant TB. It's very difficult to treat. Because of her disease, she actually had to be separated from her family and undergo 2-year-long drug treatment with daily injections and severe side effects. The good news is that she actually managed to pull through, and she's now in remission, though still at risk of relapse. But this is not your typical story. These treatments are just so demanding that many people will stop and eventually die. With that, treatments for the TB is actually becoming even more resistant to treatments, and we have now strains that are completely resistant to any drugs. Did you actually know that 1/3 of the world population is infected with tuberculosis? That is over 2 billion people, and of that, about 10% will progress to active disease. So think about what a global epidemic of drug-resistant TB could do. I mean, these could be a disaster, even here in the US. So if you think we're immune to TB here, think again. In fact, there's been several reports of drug-resistant TB in the US this past year alone. And you might have heard about things in Seattle, where at a community college, over 100 people have been exposed to TB. At a high school, 2 students tested positive for active TB, and now everyone has to be tested there. And in fact, it's estimated that over 100,000 people in King County are infected with TB. Now, what's actually confounding about tuberculosis is that not everyone who harbors the bacteria will progress to active disease. And we know that the immune system plays a very important role. Some people progress to disease and some don't, but we really don't understand why and how. So this is where we come in. My lab at the Hutch is trying to fill that knowledge gap. How do we do it? We actually develop cutting-edge statistical models to analyze big data from biomedical studies and clinical trials from around the world to try to understand how the immune system responds to infection and vaccination. We do that in the context of TB, but also HIV and many other deadly diseases. Now, the immune system is actually a team effort. I mean, you can think of it as a football team. You have different kinds of players. You got the tissues, the cells, the antibodies, the molecules that interact together to protect you. We actually have lots of data about these individual players, but we don't have yet that wide-angle movie of them playing together. So the models we work on try to use this limited data from these players to try to learn the role of each player in the team and their relationships. We mine data from multiple teams, the patients, against different opponents, the diseases, to identify the top players that will best work together to protect you. Think of it as the NFL draft. You have a list of players, they all look really good, but you've never seen them play together. So we're using cutting-edge analytics to really come up with the best possible team. Now the timing couldn't be any better. Why? What's changed? You hear big data everywhere, right? Well, we have much better ways to interrogate the immune system than we had just 5 years ago. We can now measure millions of cells from a single drop of blood in seconds, and we can get the expression level of over 100 proteins in each of these cells. This is like going from your black and white still shots of the players in the field to having multiple color HD cameras giving you 3D tracking of each single player. This is that transformative. But of course, this gives us even more data, and so we really need to come up with a sophisticated way to look at this data. Using some of these technologies and the tools that we've developed in my lab, we've actually recently identified the importance of so-called polyfunctional T cells. These polyfunctional cells are important because they can produce multiple molecules that actually help other immune cells clear infection. I'd like to think of those as the quarterback of the team. They coordinate the game and help you score that very important touchdown that will make you win that game. In a recent HIV clinical trial, we've actually shown that people who were vaccinated against HIV and produced these cells as a result were actually more likely to be protected. So they're very important. But these are rare. You have maybe 10 to 100 in a million. And so we really had to come up with a novel way of identifying these rare signals among the large repertoire of immune cells. People have thought for a very long time that just because you have more HIV or TB fighting cells, you're going to be more protected. The reality is that it's not true. It's not the quantity of the cells that matters, but the quality. And so without our work and this very different way of approaching this problem through big data, that important discovery would have been impossible. Now, results are really being used today to design and evaluate novel vaccines, both for TB and HIV. So if a vaccine doesn't produce these cells, we're not going to think that it's very good, for example. Working at the Hutch, we have access to some of the best data. As Eric said, there's a lot of collaboration. There's really cutting-edge technology data that we help generate, but we also have access to a large network of collaborators that are just eager to give us more data because of the unique expertise that we have here in-house. And I cannot tell you how much motivation we have, not only because we love what we do, because it's cool, we need to blend in all sorts of disciplines, statistics, mathematics, immunology, but also because we have the potential to improve the lives of millions of children, and children that are just like mine and no Kubeka. Thank you.